All right, so I guess we can get started. I'll do a quick little tour. PixInsight is probably one of the, I wouldn't consider it to be a user-friendly piece of software. I've been using it since 2012 or something like that, more or less when I first started taking photos of the night sky. What I'll do is I'll just go through a little bit of the interface. Basically, you have your Process Explorer, which has everything that you can run on your images. It's all broken down into different subsections. You can create your own favorites. So your recently used or the most popular type processes that you use. And then I do have a favorites list that I do a lot of the processes that I use most frequently. I just put it in the favorites because sometimes you can get lost in trying to find everything, and you can search for, you know, dynamic alignment or dynamic background extraction or anything like that, right? But I usually go through the process menu and look through here for all the different options. And then I've even gone through and created my own process list that has all the settings that I normally would use. So if you have your image open and this is your gradient removal tool, and it has all of what I normally would use in that kind of thing. And then you've got the File Explorer, so you can go through the different images that you have there. And, pardon? And the script editor, I don't use any of these usually, like the Process Explorer. As you process your image, you'll see the history of what you've done in there. You can remove things and redo them from in there. And your toolbars are completely customizable. You can move things around in there. You can create different toolbars. I like to configure the console, so everything that you do with your images will show up in here. So unlike other processing kits where it gives you a progress bar or some sort of indication that a percentage that it's done or something like that, it shows up in here. So it's very, I would consider it like Linux. And this usually resides on the other side, but I find that when you do processing, this will pop out all the time and it covers over the image when you have to move things around. And I just prefer to have it on the other side. And I created another toolbar over here that has your screen transfer function. So basically it does an auto stretch, so it keeps everything in linear format, so it doesn't actually touch any of the pixels in the image. Does anybody have any questions on the interface?
How'd you create the process console bar over there? That's a neat idea.
Right over here?
Yeah.
This here, it's actually, it's the part of the default install, but it usually sits over here inside of these. So you can just click and drag these around wherever you want them to go. Okay. And I just clicked and dragged it over to the other side because I just prefer to keep it out of the way over there.
Do you have to like undock it or something?
Yeah. You just, normally it just works. You just,
yeah, I think there's that stick. You have to unstick it maybe.
Yeah. And
then you can drag it over or something. Okay, I'll play around with that. Yeah,
there we go.
That's annoying. It's annoying that it always pops out over. You can't really see what it's doing after it's done. So.
Yeah, you just click on the down arrow and you can put it floating, or you can put it at top left or right. That sort of thing there. So if there's no questions on the interface, I know it's a very daunting piece of software, but if you keep at it and keep playing around with it, I mean, it's a lot of trial and error with PixInsight. And you get to understand what works with your images and what doesn't work. And there's, I'll show you like all the undo features with using different previews and that sort of thing. And I use over on here all your screen transfer functions, so you can do an auto stretch, and it just keeps the data there. But you can also do it through here and actually use the program itself. And if you link all the channels on all of my images, it makes them green. Don't understand why it does that. But if you unlink it, it makes it look a little bit more normal.
You can do that with the shift and the control key on the little nuclear screen there.
Yeah.
So you don't need to open that. I just learned that this week. You don't need to do that.
Well,
Yours the DLSR, Jeff?
It's a color CCD camera. So it's a one-shot color.
Okay, so it probably has more green pixels than anything else.
It's the Bayer pattern is BGGR. So it's blue, green, green, or red. So yeah, there's twice as many green pixels.
So if you hit control, hold control and hit that. And then hit shift, and I think it's if you hit shift, it'll go green. And if you hit control, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So you don't need, you can just use that shortcut. You don't need to open up the STF.
Well, there you go. Look, I learned something new today.
Well, so now we're even, because that Process Explorer thing drove me crazy.
Yeah, I know. And so the first thing I would normally do is I run the dynamic background extraction. And on a bigger image like this, I like to make the sample size a little bit bigger. And I drag them around so that they're not actually going to extract any of the object that we're trying to process. And then sometimes you have to change the tolerance because it won't pick up like some of the brighter areas down here. And just move these around. You can see that right here, there's a little bit of a donut from some dust on the sensor window. Okay. And right here, you can discard the background model. I won't do it right now, just so you can see what it looks like after you extract it. And I'll create a new instance of it because I like to do subtraction and a division. Sometimes it works better. One looks better on different images than the other.
I've had a suggestion of a tolerance value of 2 and a shadow relaxation of 6.
Oh, really?
From the guy in Ontario that the PixInsight guru. I've forgotten his name.
Ron Brecher.
Yeah, Ron. Yeah.
So tolerance of, you said 2?
2. Not 0.2, 2.
Oh, 2. Oh, really? That high?
And 6 for shadows. Now that might have been for a particular image that he was looking at my screen, but
let's try that.
how much data is this?
2.2 8.2 hours. Then I reset it and I just drag it over top of this and it puts the same points on there and do a division. And just close it. And at this point, we're still in linear. So this is where I'll do some of the larger noise in the background. I'll do a preview. Just in here. Make a clone and then I invert it. And then I use this as a mask to protect the galaxy.
You just made a straight clone and just inverted it. Nothing else.
Now you can do it by just creating a straight clone and then just invert it by using this invert button. So anything that, so it protects the galaxy, but we don't want to do that because we've already inverted it. So we're doing the reverse of what we just did. But if you just created a clone and inverted it, then the mask would look opposite. So the redness would be around the galaxy. So it would protect the detail in the galaxy. And then for the noise reduction, I always use a true wavelet transform. And most of the noise sits in these two layers here. And see if I can extract that. Scripts.
Were those the default parameters in ATrousWaveletTransform?
Yeah, those are the standard settings you would use. I found that numerous places, like on the PixInsight forums, on videos on YouTube. But if I can just find that script, it's wavelet something. Extract wavelet maybe. And we're doing 4 layers. I don't usually extract layers like this, just to show you what they all look like. And of course, what you see for here, layers are different because when you extract them, 0 is 1. But in here, layer 1 is 1. So it makes it a little more confusing.
Why do I get the feeling that software was written by 2 different people?
Yeah, right. Okay, so you can see bits of the galaxy are in there. And you can see where all the noise sits. And I'm zoomed in quite a bit there. But I typically, I don't go that crazy with it. And I probably should have cropped that out. But anyway, just for simplicity here, I'll do a preview and just to show you what it looks like. Grab some of the galaxy. Just takes a minute.
So you,
So just out of curiosity, why wouldn't you want to denoise the galaxy?
I don't know. I just want to maintain the detail. I mean, I'll get into deconvolution to bring the detail out in that. I just don't want to blur too much of the detail that's in the galaxy itself. So if you zoom in,
yeah, the usual reason for doing what Jeff is doing is that the brighter areas of the image they tend to have a higher SNR and don't need as much noise reduction. So by using a mask like he's doing, it prevents blurring those areas where it really isn't necessary and limits it to the dark areas that are the noisy areas in the image to begin with.
yeah. So if I just do an undo, you can see what the noise reduction had done to the background. And if you look at the galaxy, the bit of the galaxy that I grabbed, it's not touching a lot of the detail, but it's getting a lot of the background sort of noise that's in there.
Now, question for you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Do you have the ability to edit the mask? In other words, could you apply a stretch to the mask to make it even darker over the galaxy?
Mm-hmm. You can.
Okay, I was just curious if you could. In the example you've got there, I would, because you're actually smoothing out a little bit more of the spiral in there than I normally would.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't actually darken it, but you can, and you could probably do it right now. Actually,
I wouldn't worry about it for purposes of your demonstration. This is just me being curious. That's all.
Yeah. So I'll just apply it to the whole image.
I noticed you chose to work on preview rather than using the preview tool portion, you know, of the.
But then up here,
down at the bottom of your ATrousWaveletTransform menu, there's a preview button, a real-time preview.
yeah, I'll see. Let me see if that works. I'll just do another one. If I do a, I think it does it on the whole image.
Yeah, every time you make an adjustment, when you get the real-time preview, every time you make an adjustment on the window, it goes and it does it to the whole image. So yeah, that's.
Now I gotta wait for it.
All right.
I think if you had selected the preview, the little square preview, and then gone into your real-time preview, it would have done it on the fly.
Yeah.
Like every time you made a change. But since you were on the image when you opened up the real-time preview, or the real-time preview, then it.
There you go. Okay. And then now is the point where I take it out of linear into nonlinear. So I start doing some stretches to the image itself. Definitely don't want just the blue channel. And when you click on the check mark, it keeps a track of what image you have clicked on in the background. And I'm toying with a different, been using the Star Tools program to extract the stars and trying to mask out the stars so I don't stretch them. But for now, for this one, I'm going to use Blair's favorite, which is erosion, and to reduce the size of the stars until I figure out the proper way of doing that.
Definitely not my favorite.
problem with my camera is that any of the images that I take, everything is right hard over onto the left side of the histogram. All right, so I'm going to do a color calibration now, and there's two different ways, or there's a bunch of different ways actually to do it. You can do where it plate solves, but I never had any luck with that at all. So I don't typically use that. I get better results just by using the color calibration tool, and I use a white reference and a background reference, and I usually go with the core of the galaxy for a white reference. Seems to yield the best results. Seem to work a little better. See a whole lot of noise in there. Well, there is noise. You can see where I should have cropped it out over here because that's where the dithering. It's a little late now. I'll do it after.
Oh, you mean there wasn't frame overlap there, so you got those lines?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
And if you look right down here, I'm trying to point at my screen, and obviously you can't see that, but this is your pixel count. And if
We can see that, but only when you use the mouse.
I don't want to clip too many. When I first started out, I used to make it way too dark, the background way too dark, and I lost a lot of the image.
So what's it at now? The background color.
What do you mean? What's it at?
Yeah. So if you left click on the black, it should pop open a little window. Oh. I think there's a setting you can do, and it basically tells you the intensity values of your background. I forget what it is.
Down here, maybe. I've never seen that come up before.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how.
It's showing up on the bottom anyway.
Yeah, but there's a way to get it so that there's a little pop-up that comes up.
I'll have to look into that.
Oh, try readout. Try go image mode. Mode and then readout. And then when you click, oh no, that's not it. Okay. Anyway,
I don't know. There's so many settings in here. All right. So I'll try doing. I'll do a star mask now, and then in the star mask, I just have the usual settings that works for me. You have to play around with your image, and then I just drag it from here and on top of the subject. And this usually takes a minute or so. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Yeah, Jeff, do you do the same thing, like this process between galaxies and nebulas?
I don't use all of the processes like nebulas. I would use definitely more saturation, and because I use the on most nebulas, I would use the Optilon L-Enhance filter. I have to manually adjust the color channels because it either makes it too orange or too pink, or usually orange. But most of the time I do like the histogram, do the stretches, do the curves and all of those things in star masks. So I would use the similar processes, but I would add more, or depending on, you know, just trial and error with different processes. And with the star mask, you can see that it's grabbed some of the parts of the galaxy that we don't want it to have. So I usually do a little bit of a cheat. I downloaded a pure black image off the internet, and I usually just clone it out just on the mask using the clone stamp.
So given what you're doing, I'm assuming that you can clone from one image to another?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's taking the black from over here and putting it in the galaxy. And I'm basically...
Sorry, Jeff, by the way, never call that a cheat. If it works, it's a technique.
Okay. It's a technique then.
In the software business, we call that a feature.
Yeah.
No, that's only if it doesn't work and you can't fix it.
Bug-free since '93. I don't want to go too crazy. You can still see there's some bits down here.
Are you reducing you're making this mask to reduce your stars?
Yeah, because it's picking up some of the H2 regions in the galaxy itself.
Okay.
So I'm just cloning it all out. I mean, I'm not going to get them all because I don't want to get too crazy.
Have you tried the StarNet?
Yes.
It's slow, but it works really well.
It's not too bad on my machine. Where is it here? And I've been playing around with this mask here, but you can see that it left some residuals around, but I can usually just clone those out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, for those that haven't used StarNet too much in the past, if you leave the background a little on the bright side, you will get less of those residual stars.
Yeah, and that's probably what I didn't have the background bright enough.
Yeah, it usually does a reasonable job. It's one of the closest tools I've found to Images Plus Feature Mask. It comes pretty close. Yeah,
and I don't think I have it. They actually have a PixInsight add-on for it.
It's under Process ETC.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and you can add you got to dump the stuff into the program files directory from the internet and then start.
I just use the command prompt version. It works better for me. I could never get it to work inside PixInsight.
Yeah, what you got to do is create a clone and then hit that checkbox for the star mask.
Okay.
And then it'll create the star mask on the clone. Otherwise, it'll just take the stars out of the image that you're running.
Right.
So you can use it two different ways.
All right, now what happened to my mask? There it is, okay.
I figured out that readout thing if you want to.
Oh, what is it?
I can show you after. So if you go to Process, Global, Readout Options. So you can say calculation mode, average, single pixel. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I have. Okay, I thought that would have done it. Okay. Maybe it's processed.
I'll play around with it after. I'm sure there's probably something hidden somewhere.
Yeah, because when I must have changed something on mine, because when I click around on the screen, a little window pops up with the X and Y pixel coordinates and then the RGB values with a little magnifying glass.
Quick question for Jason. Are you using a Mac or a PC?
PC.
You have two mouse buttons. Jeff doesn't.
Oh, no, it's
No,
left click.
I'm on a
left
Windows
click.
machine.
Oh, you're on your Windows machine, Jeff?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
My Mac just is too slow now to process these things.
Macs have two buttons.
What's that?
Macs have two buttons.
Macs do?
If you have the Magic Mouse, you can simulate a second button, right?
Yeah.
All right. And this is one's for you, Blair. Morphological transformation, and I do an erosion.
Bite your tongue.
I know.
Actually, erosion works quite well, except when the stars are very close together.
Yeah, and as long as you use, like I was using, you kept messaging me saying, "What's wrong with my stars?" And I was using a square. I wasn't using round, so it was making all my stars square.
Yeah, no, you want to use round, and you want to take your mask and blur it ever so slightly so you don't get an transformation at the edge.
There's one star that always gives me some trouble. Yeah, you can see right there.
Okay, I got it now, Jeff. You hit the little down on the bottom toolbar. There's a little I don't know if we can see it because it's covered up by the zoom window, but there's a little black, like it looks like a play button down on the bottom.
Yeah.
If you hit that, it says readout data, show readout preview, and then click in there you go.
Okay.
So that gives you like, so when you're looking at like the star mask and it's telling you like your filter, your minimum and your maximum, that little readout will give you without having to look at the bottom of the screen all the time. But it's pretty handy.
There you go. Thanks a lot. All right, and the next thing I usually do is the HDR multi-scale transform. So that brings out more of the detail that's in here, and it darkens a lot of the dark bands. I usually go with 6 layers to start. This doesn't usually take very long. Oh, I forgot to invert the mask. You can see some of the other details coming right there now. You can make it really look unrealistic and then drop the layers down to 2. But I just don't like what it does to the stars. You can see, makes them all donuts. And you lose some of the detail in the core. Sometimes less is more, right?
Almost all the time.
Okay, and I'll usually attack or try to do some sharpening of the galaxy. And I usually use the default deconvolution process, but you can change, you can use an external PSF, so you can take a model of the stars that are in your image, but I find that just by moving the sliders here, that you can get a similar result. But this will make a liar out of me, probably.
What are your values for de-ringing?
I'll check that in a second. I didn't have the mask that's applied to it, so it's not going to look very nice. A lot of waiting.
This is only a, what, a 97 megabyte file or something?
100 meg, yeah.
100 meg, yeah. Mike, like when I do mine, when I stack stuff, I think I start at 2 gigabytes.
You must be drizzling, are you?
Yeah, I do a 2 times drizzle.
I tried to drizzle this, but a 2 gigabyte file will take a long time to process. So I figured I'd go with a smaller version of it. Makes it a little easier.
Yeah, by the time, like, once I get it in there and I crop it, it's still 500 or 600 megs. But
I'm just making a luminance mask now. And to make a luminance mask, you just extract the luminance. And you can even extract the different color channels if you want as well. And I'll just go and select, it's already been selected.
One trick that's helpful here, Jeff, while you're waiting for that to process is subtracting a luminance mask works well. It limits the sharpening to the brighter areas of the image. But quite often, it also saturates many of the stars. So if you use a starless luminance mask made from your StarNet image, you'll find that you don't saturate your stars and they don't become overly bright.
Yeah. I should have used that one.
Well, this works perfectly. It will prevent bringing up the noise in the background, and that's generally what you want to do whenever you do any sharpening, is you apply it. Oops, sorry about that. I bumped the mute button. Just depending upon what you want to sharpen.
Sometimes I wish I had an i7 processor, but I don't.
What are you running?
It's an i5.
Ah, okay.
And that seemed to work a little better.
Jerry, it's Dave Robertson here. You guys are so far above my pay grade that I'm going to leave. I'm years away from catching up to what you're doing here. So thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you.
You're welcome.
Okay, good night then.
Good night now.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm so lost. It seemed like you guys were talking Chinese, but I'm going to stick it out and watch, but I have no idea what you guys are doing.
The thing to do, by the way, whenever you get in that state is simply ask.
Exactly.
You'll find that image processing, like most technical endeavors, has its own lingo, which you have to get a hold of first. So whenever we say something that you don't understand, just ask. Slow things down much, because just got a slow computer. It'll just do that in the background while you ask. I had to get my shot in.
Well, now that that's finally done, I'll start putting some saturation into the image to try to get some more color out of the galaxy itself.
So Jeff, I see you have broken with the PixInsight mantra of only doing deconvolution on a linear image.
No, I think that was, what do you mean?
Deconvolution, by the way, I completely agree with what you're doing. Deconvolution, if you start reading through the PixInsight firms, they always insist on doing it on the linear image. The reason, of course, is that if you pick a star as a point spread function, then you don't want to have distorted the star before you apply it as sharpening. But you're doing exactly what I do. You're making a small Gaussian to represent a star and using that, and it works just fine.
Yeah, it seems to work for me. I tried doing a custom PSF file, but I found that I would get much better results doing it the way, using the default functions and just modifying it manually.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The problem with picking a star is you have to pick many of them and average them to get the tail of the star far enough out of the noise so that you don't generate a whole pile of noise during your deconvolution.
Yeah.
So I tend to like what you've done, which is to, for all intents and purposes, use a Gaussian to generate a fake star. And it works quite well.
There's a really easy way to do that, though, right? To create the PSF.
There's all sorts.
I've done it before, I think. It's been a while.
So if you go to script, render, there's a dynamic PSF, I think it is. Render. Yeah. Just a second. You want to do it on preview because it's going to do every star in the image.
Yeah.
You basically draw a box around a representative area, hit evaluate, and then you hit OK, and it basically will pick 50 or 60 stars, and it'll create a PSF from your image. So it's probably
I think you have to manually pick the stars, though, don't you, or does it automatically pick it?
No, it automatically. You draw a preview box.
Yep.
And then switch to the preview. Okay, and then go to script render dynamic PSF. The other way, you have to pick the stars yourself. This way is all automatic. So leave everything alone and hit evaluate. And then there's your PSF. And then you hit OK and it'll generate it.
That was probably not the right part of the image to use.
But anyway, that's how fast it is, and it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I'll have to play around with that. There's no shortage of playing around in the software either.
Mm-hmm.
I think in that script there was a create button that should have been clicked.
Yeah,
I didn't click on it. So for the saturation, make sure I have the right one. It's going to take a lot of saturation. And then what you'll see is that it'll start turning red in the center, and then I'll show you what I do to fix that. There's another script I use called the game script. And this allows you to create masks. You can do luminance mask, gradient edge mask, binary mask, brightness mask, star masks. The star mask it's never worked really well for me. And make a gradient mask. And I'm only going to select the core. It's the greatest thing ever is finding all of these scripts somewhere on the internet. It makes it a lot easier.
Does PixInsight allow you to paint a mask?
I don't know.
Yes, but it's really, really complicated to do it. You basically, I was shown, I just got through a number of hours of tutorial with Ron Fresher, and he showed me how to do it. And it's just like, you got to create a white thing and then a black thing. And then you basically, clone stamp onto your mask using, it's completely unintuitive, but you can do it. I've just taken it out into Photoshop and masked it and come back in here after I was done.
I was going to suggest the same thing. Just take it out to Photoshop, dim the image just a little bit, and then paint the center of the galaxy white and do a threshold, and you've instantly got a mask.
Okay. So the tutorials that you get through Ron, you have to sign up for those?
Well, it was like a one-on-one paid thing.
Oh, yeah. Was it expensive?
It was like $100 an hour or something. But
Okay.
let me tell you though, this guy is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Ron has come to give some talks at the Halifax Center on several occasions.
I learned so much stuff. Like it's not even, I can't even condense it all. Like it's just, I've got like 10 pages of double-sided notes, and we worked through one of my images, and at the end of it, I was just like, oh my God, I took that,
Yeah, right. So how many sessions did you do?
I think I did, 3 hours? We basically worked through an image from start to finish, and he showed me his process and some of the tools and stuff. And
Yeah, I've signed up for some of the paid sites, but they don't actually, you don't work on your own image. They have their own images, right? Yeah. So it makes a big difference when you can actually work on your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So for the core, I would just do a desaturation on the core. And sorry, my kid's yelling at the cat.
It's not a problem till the cat yells back.
Yeah. She's already retaliated once. She's got 2 big scratches from one cheek to the other. Pulling on the cat's tail is not a good idea.
My brother sent me a gift today, and it was basically along the lines of, our dogs think we quit work to stay at home with them. Our cat thinks we got fired because we're actually the lazy bum they believed we were.
Just trying to manually adjust some of these to get more blue. Then I'll boost the saturation again. that's pretty much it. I think I went a little too crazy on with the saturation. But that's basically what I do for processing in here. And then I just usually just save it out as a JPEG file. But what I always do is I save the project. I've got a project hard drive out in the observatory, and I save everything, so that way if I think of something else that I can try, I can open up the same project, and it's as if I just started right back where I left off.
Can you copy the steps from one project to another? I probably said that wrong. Can you take all of the steps that you applied to this image and apply to another image?
I don't know. I don't even see anything in the process. Oh, hang on.
I think what you can do is you can select all the steps and drag them as an icon set onto the desktop, and then you can save that as an icon set and load that into a different image.
Oh, okay.
But what I was told, I asked the same question, and what I was told was that you probably never want to do that because the adjustments that you've made to the different tools were tailored to that one particular image. And if you just blanket apply them to another image, you're probably not going to like what you get.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. I was just curious whether you could do it because there are usually some steps that are very similar in many cases.
But what you can do, I think you can just click and drag it onto the gray space, Jeff, and it'll save it as a process icon.
Yeah.
And then you can save that. You can if you open that now, it'll have all the settings that you use when you ran that tool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what I did here. Like you can do it from here as well and drag it down.
Yep.
But I don't know what I clicked on in here, but it must have redid the initial state or something.
Yeah, wherever the little orange arrow is where you're at in your steps.
Yeah. But I don't think you can copy all of these at once. You have to do one at a time, I think. And that's what we would have ended up with. Does anyone have any questions?
I notice you use, when you did your stretching, you're using the histogram transformation tool. For those people that are used to Photoshop, it's a levels tool. What other stretches are available in the package?
There is like the curves. You can use the curves transformation to do your stretches. I've been playing around with that a bit. And you can see like when you click on different parts of the image where the data sits. But I think there's other.
Yeah, there's an ArcSine H stretch, which I use for galaxies. And then the other one is masked stretch, which is kind of cool. I just learned that one.
Sorry, what was that last one you said, Jason?
Masked stretch.
Oh, okay.
So you set the background intensity and a couple other background sample, and you let it run, and it actually does a pretty decent job.
I've never used any of these in here.
That target value there, how would you evaluate that?
Just by clicking on the screen background. Well, your target background should be gray, which is like 0.1, right? So you can adjust that to be more lighter or darker, but 0.1 is usually what you want to use.
And I guess for a background reference, you can probably use a
just a black preview. Yeah.
And of course, we're doing this to a JPEG file, but and you just apply that.
Yep. It's going to blow it.
I'm assuming when you said the background should be 0.1, that those values are all scaled to 1 being the brightest.
Yeah, and it's meant to be on a linear image, so 0.1 is kind of it's going to be 0.001 or something like that on an unstretched image. So it's like, just in terms of what I've seen. So, but if RG and B are 0.1 on a stretched image, that's kind of the quote unquote right color or the right intensity for the background. Or so I've been told. I'm just coming off a few of these sessions with Ron, so there's a few little tidbits like that I'm replaying that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, with most of this stuff, there are far too many adherents, shall I say, out there that demand that you have to do things a certain way. The simple fact is, unless you're doing scientific image processing, you do it so it looks the way you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not, that's why I'm saying in air quotes, I probably lean a little bit to the darker, I'm thinking sort of a Star Wars look rather than a sort of a gray sky, even though it's probably more spatially accurate to be gray. It looks better black to me.
Hey, I live in the city. The sky is almost white.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got to contend with the airport, but that's not too bad when you compare it to the city.
Well, I've got high Bortle 6, low Bortle 7 skies. So like my sky background is usually around 18.3 or so magnitudes per arc second, which is way too bright. But you can get a decent shot if you work at it.
That's true. Yep. Urban astrophotography, right?
What's that?
Urban astrophotography.
Yep. It's all you get to do these days.
Yeah.
Although I see I'm now allowed to go to my cottage, so there is that.
Yes. They're dark skies there, isn't it?
They're darker than here. They're not quite as dark as St. Croix. They're probably in the neighborhood of what you have.
Okay.
The Milky Way is definitely quite visible all the way overhead, and there's some light pollution around, to say the least, but no airport.
And Blair, it's Bob here. Are you suggesting that the SCO might be open soon?
No, not in the least. What I'm saying basically is that the province is in the middle of lifting some of the restrictions, and one of the restrictions they are now allowing is that you can go to your own summer cottage.
Okay.
They're still not allowing people to, shall we say, cross households where you could infect someone else.
Okay.
Yeah, all good restrictions to keep in mind. It's the 6-foot distancing is still there, all those requirements. It's just, if it's your cottage, you can go there now.
Okay, that makes sense.
I believe provincial parks too, isn't it?
The provincial parks are opening, but you still have to respect the 2-meter distancing.
2 meters.
Yeah. I think they're keeping the beaches closed.
That is correct. The beaches are still closed, and there was one other thing that was still closed, but walking trails and that sort of thing will now be open. Provincial parks, and I'm assuming municipal parks, although I do not know that for sure.
Yes, all parks.
Yep.
All parks, okay. Including federal?
Not federal.
Not federal. Okay.
The provincial parks are open for them to actually work on getting them ready.
Makes
Staff
sense.
are allowed to go in at this point.
Yeah. Those are the ones you can camp at, I think, right?
Yeah, the campgrounds are closed, but all the provincial parks are now open.
Okay. So you can walk, but you can't stay.
That's right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
So like Graves Island or whatever, the gate will probably be closed until Victoria or Day weekend or whatever, but you can still walk in. It's like you can, you know, all winter. But a park like Bayswater Beach, for example, is a beach park. You're not allowed to go there.
Right.
Well, you can, but as long as you're not on the beach. So like Crystal Crescent, where you have a road in and walking trails, you can walk on the trails and the road, but you can't go on the beach.
Right.
It's confusing, so I'm just going to do what I'm doing. He did mention something as well today that if you see too many cars, keep driving or something like that. Or
yeah, the simple fact is if you avoid other people, your risk of catching it goes way down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, places like Point Pleasant or Long Lake or whatever near the city will be crazy. So stay away from those places.
I suspect if they become crazy, they'll become closed in a hurry.
Yep.
Or gated.
Well, they're gated. Yeah, they're gated now.
Yeah. But I mean controlled access rather than open access.
Yep.
So that did a nice job on star color as well, Jeff.
yeah.
Now, can you zoom in on the background on that image? Usually with dialing up the saturation, you run into the issue of increasing the chrominance noise in the background. And I'm just curious how it looks if it was smoothed enough that doesn't show up. It's not too bad. There's a little there, but not bad.
I actually saw a thing from Astro Backyard. It's in he does it in Photoshop, but it actually works quite well in here. Is that you can do a range selection and then invert it so that it's basically selecting all the black, and then basically you can dial down the saturation just on the black parts of the background, and it really cleans up that blotchiness that you see there.
Yeah. Jeff, did you use a mask I didn't catch that. Did you have a mask applied when you did that saturation boost?
Yeah, it was a lightness mask.
Okay, that's why it didn't show up in the background then. That makes perfect sense. Thanks.
No problem. Now, when you said use a range selection, you're talking about this one?
Yeah. So basically the way this works is, and this I knew before I talked to Ron, I found this one out online. So if you turn on the preview, and then you drag the lower limit up, it'll basically get darker and darker. And you can kind of tweak that. And then if you go back to the left, so go back to the left a bit. Yeah, so you can actually, somewhere in there, and then you can go to the smoothness. So the bottom slider.
Right.
And this is basically like a Gaussian blur type thing where it basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you can kind of make. So you can before I knew the game existed, this is how I was making my galaxy masks, or masks for whatever, because basically it's creating a mask on the intensity. It's basically giving you a range of lightness to create your mask. So for example, if you're just looking for the dark colors, then you can create a mask that targets the blacks and then invert it, that targets the lights and then invert it and then go after your background.
Okay.
So actually, I think what you'd want to do is make this so that you're getting stars and nebulosity, and the things that stay. So yeah, something like that. So that now basically you'd then invert this. So you can hit the invert checkbox. and then so there. So now when you hit the square to run it. So now basically you have a mask that's just the outside of your galaxy. So sometimes, like when I'm doing my curves, I'll use this range selection like this. So I'll do one set of curves for the nebulosity or the galaxy, and then I'll invert the mask and then do a different set of saturations and curves for the stars in the sky.
Okay. Yep. Okay, that makes sense.
It's kind of like game. You know, it's just game is just an ellipsoid mask versus an intensity. But you can do the same thing with game, is you can invert the mask, or you can, you know, protect the galaxy and then unprotect the galaxy and kind of treat those two things separately.
Yeah.
Because I find that like Blair, I think it was that was talking, said that you get those blotchy in the black when you do the saturation to the sky. Mm-hmm. This kind of helps you avoid that, but still get the stars some color.
There you go. Pretty informative. It's learning a lot tonight.
The wonders of masks.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then the other really cool thing that I was playing around with a couple of weeks ago was, so game kind of does it out of the box, but what I was doing was creating a range mask on my galaxy and then creating a star mask and then using pixel math to subtract the stars from the mask that range selection made. So you basically ended up with like Swiss cheese, because you're basically removing the stars, the white stars, from the white mask. So you end up with a white mask with a bunch of holes in it, and then using that to do stuff to the galaxy.
When you do that, do you have very abrupt holes around the stars, or did you blur it a little?
You blur it a little bit so you don't get those little you don't get the rings.
That's what I was curious about. Okay, yeah. Generally, when you're doing things like that, you want to blur it just a little bit. Better still, if you want to be able to do stuff like that, and this is for an image stretch now, not a color adjustment, but if you make the mask a starless mask using StarNet as an example, don't blur it. And what it does is it actually imparts the detail of the mask on the image as you stretch.
Just curious, how did you guys get the backgrounds on your pictures to be like that? Is that like a Zoom thing? Or are you guys like sitting in front of pictures?
No, it's a Zoom feature.
Yeah, it's you can bear with me a second here. So if you take a look, the background on mine is just an image. At least it was until I moved out of the way. It's just an image that I took 2 years ago now. And you do it down on the bottom, right next to your video button, you'll see an up arrow, and in there is choose virtual background.
Right on. Okay. I love it.
You can make yourself look like you're in Florida or somewhere down south, right?
Yeah, I figured it had to be something like that. I just couldn't figure out how to do it.
And we're all floating in space.
On the moon.
I have to give I don't have to. I volunteered to give a presentation next week for the Dartmouth Photo Club, so I'll be sure to do that next week when I'm talking.
Yeah, don't need to see the messy room in the background, right?
Yeah. Well, I wish Google Hangouts would do that, because we use that at work all the time, and I got a stupid light in my office that shines right into where my camera is. So. This must have been a my version of this galaxy is nowhere near as red in the core. So this is before I got my camera modified. So I was looking back at my picture of this. And
you can completely solve that problem by just painting a mask in the center of the galaxy blur it a fair amount and just add some red.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I may do that.
The other tip when you're doing that is take a look at an image or two on the web, find out where the HA regions are, and paint dots over them when you make that mask. Again, when you blur it, it'll all come out as a nice HA region.
Yeah.
Or you could just take HA, but I never.
That assumes you have a modified camera that can see HA.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I do now. So when I photographed M106 the other night, I got some nice HA in there. So. So did you capture HA data for this?
I did, yeah.
How long is the exposure in this image, Jeff?
This is 2 hours. They were 10 minutes each.
And take them through your filter?
Yep. This is only the red portion. I just extracted the red channel.
Yeah, no, sorry. What I meant though is the 2 hours of data, were you using your filter at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
It is quite noisy.
So I think what you could do is, like, I've seen this done in Photoshop, but you could essentially denoise this and then do what is it, LRGB combine. So combine your, use your existing image as RGB and then have your HA be luminance. And then it would essentially amplify the areas where there's HA as white.
Yeah.
So you'd want to do like curves first to get some more contrast between the sky and the galaxy. But I think then if you did the LRGB tool, I think that would give you it would amplify.
Yeah,
the one thing you have to watch out for when you do that is you end up with salmon colored HA regions. The way to get around that is add a little tiny bit of the HA layer back into the red layer before you do the LRGB combine, and that tends to make it the nice red color that you want.
Okay, cool.
I'll just show you quickly what I usually do for this. You have to know what your the band width of your filter, but I'll just do some quick processing here.
It was so quick. What were you doing there?
I just did a quick stretch and noise reduction. That's all I did to it. Just did the ATrousWaveletTransform and just stretched the image. So the image that I want, you want to make sure, because when I'm taking the camera up, putting the filter in, sometimes the rotation changes. And sometimes when you refocus it and it's not lined up properly, it's rotated out of the frame a little bit. So you have to do a star alignment on them so that the two match. So if I was to take this image, and you can just quickly have a look and see if it lines up. and it won't because it's cropped, right? So the reference image I'm going to use as, well, it's a JPEG file anyway, but and view. All right. You can see it lines up a little better. It lines up now, but you have to crop it out in the end. And then what I use to combine them is a script, the narrowband RGB combination. And you pick your RGB source, which is the red image, or the JPEG image. And the HA registered image is going to be your red channel. And the bandwidth is 10. I'm not sure exactly what the scale means, but if you apply it, it'll show up in the preview here. And you can adjust the scale. But you can see it makes the background nice and red.
I'm used to doing a lot of work to get rid of that red background.
Well, it's not necessarily nice to have the red background, but.
I mean, so in theory, though, if you went back to your red image, your HA data, Jeff, if you added more contrast to that, so basically the sky was black. Mm-hmm. If you did like a like an S curve in curves, and basically made the brights brighter and the darks darker, it wouldn't add that red to your background, right?
So an S curve like in here?
Yeah, so do a curve transformation to your HA data. So you basically, yeah, and then pull up the, I'm not used to working with narrowband, but basically make the core brighter and the sky darker. Maybe it can't.
Something like that?
I would think so. You'd have to try it, but in theory, if the background is black, it's not going to impact. Like this is essentially being treated as a luminosity layer.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just highlighting what's already, what's already there. So the more black the sky is, the less effect the HA filter would have on the sky versus the galaxy core itself, right? The other thing I think you could do is put a luminosity mask, or a luminance mask on your RGB data so that it's only affecting the galaxy core, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you gotta go do curves on the red and try and draw it back on your sky, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you mask to start with, I think it would be less effort to fix.
Yeah. So
I've
you
never
do
tried.
something like that.
Yeah, I've never tried this. I'm just going off of what I know about like Photoshop and how masks and stuff work. So
Yeah, so that'll probably work better.
If black, if black is nothing and white is everything, then that's the only impact that this is going to have is on the parts that are showing. Anything that's black won't be impacted in theory, but I've never tried that.
Let's see if it works.
Narrowband is a whole different world for me.
It's a love-hate relationship sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when you... Yeah, it didn't really work.
That's interesting. Just highlight over that scale for a second. Is there a tooltip on it?
The scale? Oh.
Yeah, like if just hover over the label there. Red channels multiplication factor. Okay.
Yeah, so you can jack it way up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to tweak that so that it doesn't mess with your sky.
Yeah, it's not what you want.
Galaxy's on fire.
There's pixel math. You can do it as well, but so yeah, I don't know what to edit in this. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. That's all I have. So any more questions?
That was pretty good, Jeff. I'm glad we'll get a recording of this because it only lasted for about 30 seconds each 30 seconds. Maybe in slow motion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna take a run at editing. I was gonna follow along with my image, but I kind of got sidetracked and started editing my image, and I got it almost to the end before we even started. So,
oh, there you go.
I'm gonna finish mine and then do yours.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what you can get out of mine.
Yeah, I'll have to slowly go through my 10 double-sided pages of notes and try and remember what I learned. Be good practice, though.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for coming. We'll have to do this again sometime if the interest is there.
It was beyond educational. It's the old drink from a fire hose again, but I do thank you because every little bit helps, and I think at 10% out of what you said, that's 10% more than I started with.
Exactly. And I mean, with PixInsight, you're always learning something new with it every time that you're using it, right? So.
Still trying to land on a proper set of procedures. Thank you.
You're welcome.